everybody. Welcome back to Hammer Rugby. And this week, it's episode 2 of the 2020 Major League Rugby season. And so, what do we have on top for this week? My goal is to cover the 6 teams in the Eastern Conference and take a minute or less on each. That way, I just get you caught up on the juicy bits of information for those of you guys who don't really follow the league all that much. So here we go. So let's start in the East with Rooney. A debutant last year in 2019. They made the playoffs. Look for them to make the playoffs again this year. Why? Splash signings, re-signed some critical players to their mix last season, and they added some depth. So who's a splash signing? Of course, former French international center Mathieu Bastaron, the Frenchie. They added him, puts the MLR on the map, legitimate destination for former internationals. Added to that some re-signings. One of the biggies, without a doubt, Dylan Fawcett. Eagle hooker, scored most, I think he was their top try scorer from the back of the rolling maul last year. They signed Alex McDonald, another U.S. Eagle, Chris Mattina, Mark O'Keefe. They re-signed Ben Foden, and then they added an LU guy, J.P. Aguirre. They added to the midfield, which gets some depth. Now, be on the lookout. Mike Tolkien, former head coach, out. Greg McWilliams in. Look to see how they feel out the coach-player relationship and get in tune with what McWilliams wants to achieve on the pitch. It'll be interesting to see where the result is. The second team to take a look at was another debutant from last year, the Toronto Arrows. For Toronto, their evolution into this year in player personnel has really been about 2 ethos. Continuity as consistency and Canadian rugby. I do really think that the ownership feels the burden of carrying and being the only Canadian team represented in MLR. And it's as a result of that, much of their lineup is built from Canadian players. They do have a few internationals to note. So first, a strong Canadian in the front row, Rob Brower, okay, prop, and then fly-off Kiwi player Sam Malcolm. Undersized, good with the boot, very crafty, okay? Go on from that, Giuseppe Detoy, the backline player, really nice player last year. I believe he's French-Canadian. Gaston Mires, international player. And then newly named captain, congrats to you, Dan. Dan Moore really represents what I think they want to achieve. Grit, determination, and relentlessness. That absolutely captivates Dan Moore's spirit on the pitch. And so look for Toronto to be in the mix this year too. Next up, a 2020 debutante, new team in the league, the New England Free Jacks. And unlike Toronto and unlike Rooney, who had some gaps to fill and add to some depth, this team, like the 2 others that I'll talk about later, had to start from scratch. So what's our lineup looking? Well, Timothy Guillemot came from Austin. Eagle, number 532, Tadag Leader, who played in the league last year, another LU guy, by the way. Pasili Ranakoma, and a NOLA goal player, which will be missed by the folks down in the Crescent City, Zach Streifler. Also on loan last year to Rooney was Sean McNulty. Again, all these guys have some experience in MLR. But the Free Jacks have rounded out their roster with a nice complement of U.S.-born players, and players with Mitre 10 experience. So it's hard to say where they're going to be. It's hard to say what that side is going to look like. But we wish them all the best in their Cinderella season. And yet another debutant for the 2020 season of Major League Rugby, Old Glory DC, or the OG as they're known as, made one of arguably the biggest signings of the offseason. Recent World Cup winner, former Springbok, the Beast, Tandai Matawarira. I think I got it right. Nevertheless, he'll play prop. He will anchor that side's front row. He'll provide them with some leadership and, without a doubt, gives the MLR some legitimacy. What else did they do to add to the side? They added a few key players that I think are critical. Number one, huge hulking lock and MLR champion from Seattle, Episai Nakatini. Dylan Tykado Simpson, a fullback from Colorado. Excellent player, great high step. U.S. Eagles center Threaten Palamo will add much to that midfield. And finally, look for Samoan international scrum half Danny Tusiktala to be the linchpin between the forwards and the backs. Look for Old G to make some noise this season. Another newcomer for the 2020 season of Major League Rugby, Rugby ATL from Atlanta, of course. And they took a different approach to building their program. What I think they were looking to do is build continuity and consistency with players that have played before. We're talking about young collegiate players, largely from Life University. So who are we talking about here? We're talking about Xander and Duncan Van Schaalwick. We're talking about Julian Montez, former NFL D end. That would be Henry Ajuduya, Harley Wheeler, player of the year last year, Harley Davidson, Austin White, U.S. Eagle, Alex Mon. All those guys were dominant players in the Life setup. Added to that, two other excellent D1A players, Zach Young and my guy, U.S. Eagle, LU grad, Chance Wagalewski. Shout out to you, my brother. Do well this year, Chancey. Can't wait to see you in action. This club, while young, I believe will make a lot of noise because a lot of them have played together, and that consistency and continuity will help them through the course of the season. Look for ATL to make a splash. And last but not least, my guys, NOLA Gold. Yeah, I got myself some merch this week. Pretty stoked to be sporting it. NOLA is actually in the East the only team that has played in all 3 seasons of Major League Rugby, and they're one of few teams in the league to have a coach that's been there for all 3 seasons. The nice thing is he provides some continuity and structure to this team, and there's a core of guys that understand and know how Nate wants to play. So who are we talking about here? We're talking about hooker Eric Howard. Love Eric Howard, absolute stud. Prop Ben Tarr, coming back from injury, should make a difference in the scrum. 8-man Captain America, Cam Dolan. Let's see, scrum half Holden Youngert, fly half Scott Gale, center Con Foley, wing Nick Feeks. Shout out to another LU guy, Nick. He's put on some weight. He looks really good out there. And then finally, number 15, JP Eloff. Love that guy. Just absolutely electric. Those guys are the steady rudders of the ship. They added some splash signings. The big one, Carl Meyer, added some size to that midfield. Robbie Coleman, an Australian that played with the Brumbies, and an Argentinian international, Julian Dominguez. So they really have a core of players, and that'll really keep the steady system going. And then they added some depth. My fear is the big loss, and you're going to hear it here if you haven't heard it. Tristan Blewett will not be coming back. This guy scored 13 tries. He's going to stay in South Africa. And Liam Poach from Earful of Dirt let it loose a couple weeks ago that he hadn't been in camp yet as of 2 weeks ago. And I've confirmed through a source down there, South African source, I won't give his name up, but you know who you are, has said that Tristan will not be coming back. That's a huge loss and a blow. If they can keep this team healthy, look for them to make some noise in the East. Okay, so who are my picks to make the playoffs this year from the Eastern Conference? We know that 3 teams will make the playoffs from both conferences. Who is it going to be from the East in my mind? I'm going to put it out there right now. I think Rooney's got to be a contender based upon the performance last year. OG made some excellent signings this year. They have some experience. I think they're going to be in the mix as well. And finally, my sentimental pick, my boys from the Crescent City, NOLA. I think their core, along with some of their additions, are going to keep a pretty steady ship from last year. They just got to come up with the loss and make up for the loss of Tristan.